Hello, what's up? Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the strategy. And I'm not going to be... I'm not going to be too boring, I hope, but yeah, so I'm thinking a little bit about squad play. And we have a good laugh when we play these nights and so on, but we don't play very perfect squad play. And that's not very strange. I mean, if you play with just a random person and you don't have any comms at all, then the best you can do is pretty much give an order as squad lead and hope someone is following you. But when you have comms, which we do, you can actually take it a little bit further, and we do. I mean, we talk a lot. We're telling each other where someone is. We're trying to spot. We do some very basic stuff. But I'm talking about bring it beyond, and I'm going to bring this example up because it's very easy to understand, and it should give a good base for what you want to achieve with a squad, apart from just winning, of course. But I mean, how do we do that as a squad? So I actually brought this old piece. This map is Strike at Karkand from Battlefield 2, which is ancient by today's means. But I'm going to go through how a typical strategy would look at the beginning of this in a competitive game in like the leagues like up north, ESL, and so on. How a good team would do it, both attacking and defending, but we'll focus on the attacking part because that's mostly what you do in a modern Battlefield game, as it's a little bit different paced. And one of the reasons why I think this is a good idea is that when you played competitive, you either played 5 versus 5, and at this time you were 5 players in one squad, infantry only, 5 versus 5, or you played 8 versus 8 with vehicles as well. We could focus on the infantry part just to make show how you could do this as a squad. So just to mention briefly what you do as a defender. So if you didn't play Battlefield at this time, this is the defender side, this here. And they start with all these 3 flags. And if you cap, if the US, the ones down here, if they cap all these 3 flags, you lost. But it's also, I mean, it's classic conquest, so if you die and you don't get revived, you lose a point, and the one with majority of these flags also make sure the opponent loses points. Normally what you would do is, I mean, US always start from here. This is a bit strange for today. Today conquest is kind of even most of the times, but in this case it always started at US down here, and they attack, they can't lose this point. And Middle Eastern mech, whatever, they defend, and they try to defend all 3 flags, and they can take it back and forth, and if they lose all and if everyone dies, then they lost, simply put. So normally what they would do is to put 1 player around here that would scout this side, and 1 player around here that will scout this side, and then just to make sure that the US don't just go all the way here and take flag, they put 1 player here. 3 players. That means that 2 players don't spawn. And this is a strange concept, I think, for most players that actually play in public. That because usually everyone spawns and they run, and that's just useless. That's stupid, to be frank. So you don't want to spawn, because if someone from the US somehow managed to get around, which they would want to do, then you would want 2 players to spawn at either of these flags that you need to defend. So this is the starter point for defenders, and then they spawn in, and then yeah, they do all their things. What US would like to do, they can do all kinds of stuff, but a typical example is that 4 players, that is most of the team, they spawn and they run here and they go straight for this flag. And meanwhile, another player, a squad lead, by the way, okay, so it's 1 squad, 5 players, but in effect you have 2 squad lead, and that's because in this era you could only spawn at the squad lead. So you had to switch squad leads to be able to spawn at different locations. So that's what's 4 players going for. Meanwhile, the other squad lead would probably go somewhere around here and try to go there. Undetected, by the way. So, what would it do? Well, if you go 4 players here, the defenders have to spawn and try to defend this location. And if it's a good team, they will actually count and know that there are only 4 players attacking. There must be someone doing something else. And they can account from that. But we don't really care too much about that. Let's say they just need to spawn and defend. And if we, as a US, has a good run, maybe we pop off or whatever, we can actually take this flag and then all is good. But if it goes slow or we are losing this fight, this one comes into play. And when he's around here, probably, he's telling the other ones, I'm getting close to the flag. And now they know that they need to die because they need to spawn at this player. And when this player is just at the flag, not actually stepping on the flag, he tells these squad mates to spawn on me. And if this works perfectly, they have prepared by dying or not spawning, so they can just pop in and suddenly you have 5 people or 4 here and you can take that flag really, really fast. Meanwhile, doing so, that means that the defenders, they have maybe 4, maybe 5 players here doing nothing. And they can't defend that flag. This is simple strategy, really. And this is actually not special for like a battlefield or anything. It's actually real strategy, like you do in a real war. You have troop movement and the one that can move the fastest actually wins usually. That's why you started to have horses, that's why you have vehicles. The Germans had trains moving from the east front to the west front in the First World War. They built the Autobahn for the Second World War. All that comes down to troop movement, which you need to be faster than the opponent. So the thing that we can take away from here is, and I mean this continues to go on, you can only have set strategy for the start and then you have actually to know the basics and act accordingly, which differentiates a good team from a bad team usually. So let's say, just for instance, 4 players go straight up here, we have the one going around. They failed to take this one, but by this squad lead they managed to take this one. This flag is now US. Now what do? Well, defenders are obviously running towards it, but they also need to defend these 2. So if you're doing this perfectly, 4 players, the squad lead that run all the way here and 3 other players spawned here. That means that 4 US players are up here. Meanwhile, another US player, the 5th player, are spawning perhaps here and taking a walk. And why that works is because defenders see that they lose that one, which means that they have to redeploy or move. So they start to run something like that and something like that, not knowing about this one. If it's a good team, they obviously they keep track. That's why pressing tab every now and then when you play like a competitive game and you get the names up, you can see who's alive and who's not, because then you can actually know or get a pretty good picture of where players are, even if you can't actually see them or they're not spotted. So they are moving back. That's the US flag. It takes time to run. This squad lead makes the communication, I'm getting close, and I'm on the flag. 3 players make sure they die pretty soon, and they spawn up here, and suddenly you have 4 players and you have this flag as well. Now, exactly how you do this, that's a little bit up to get the feeling of your opponent and what the opportunities there are. I mean, if you can manage to keep this flag with, let's say, 2 players, and the opponent spend 4 players up here, obviously you are going to take this flag by having 3 players versus 1 defender. Every time is a little bit feeling of how much opportunity do you actually have. Can you take control of the flag with the number of as little people as possible. But the main thing is that what pretty much everyone is doing wrong when you do like the public play is that everyone is running, and that's useless because you don't do anything good at that time, and it makes sure it prevents you from spawning somewhere else. In more modern Battlefield games, you have 4 players in a squad and you can spawn at anyone. But basically what you would need to do is to have 2 squad leadish people where one can always flank around to another flag, basically. Not just the tactical flank to get to kill the opponent, but to get the strategical flank around the entire like enemy. And if you have 64 players, that's of course very difficult because the other players will do crazy stuff. But you can actually be really effective yourself as a squad if you do this. And if you bring in like spawn beacons and so on, you can actually create different spots where you can put up like a temporary home base. This is something that usually better Overwatch players complain about worse players, because if you just spawn and directly you run towards the enemy and you just trickling in one player, and you're facing like let's say that 3 players are defending a position, and you spawn and you run there and you are alone, they will win. And then your squad mate do the same and the same and the same, and suddenly you have lost like forever. But if you instead group up and you can go 4 player against these 3 players, you will actually win the fight. So that's probably the next thing that you will know, that, and that's kind of the main. That's why I said you don't step into the flag before your teammates have spawned at you, and that's the problem. If I'm reflecting on when I play, probably when I'm going to play later tonight, when we just goof around and so on, that we are not that disciplined, that we care about that. Let's say that I'm a squad lead, and I'm telling the other player, my friends, that I'm at the flag. Well, they may or may not spawn on me, depending on what they feel for the moment. And on the other hand, it can get the other way around as well. And that's of course the difference of playing actual competitive and to play just for fun. Because if you play competitive, this is something you talk about afterwards, if you can't get together and get that right, then you should probably switch up something or do. And that's why you have a squad lead, actually, because even at a higher level, if you play like competitive, you have a squad lead that kind of sets the strategy within the game. Even if other players had ideas, normally what you would do is to talk about it before and after the game. But during the game, to keep the comms clean, you have 1 or 2 players making the shots, and everyone else is just following. If you like completely just banging head in the wall, of course you can switch something up. But usually that's how you have to be confident in this. The role of squad leader is a little bit less important in late Battlefield games, actually, because you can spawn at anyone. But you still have to be where someone has to be the one player that needs to keep him or herself alive while doing something good, so the other players can actually spawn. And in Battlefield 5, that since you can't spawn when under fire, that's actually the last squad member retreat. That's actually a good thing. Usually, if you have the opportunity to retreat without getting killed, then you can come back in the second wave, which is a really good thing. I think that is definitely something that more players should do. I'm not going to drag on with this for now. I've already been talking for about 20 minutes.